Habits might be one of the most requested things that people want to change about their life every single year. And that is for good reason, because if you're someone who's indulging into, let's say, degenerate-like habits, and you're doing everything for the pleasure now instead of sacrificing for future fulfillment and pleasure from different things in the long run, then what ends up happening is that you'll live your life believing that there is no point of doing anything and that your life is meaningless, so you might as well indulge now instead of sacrificing what you've currently got to end up getting something else in the future. Or you might be someone who builds habits that end up pushing across discipline onto you and the other people around you as well. Obviously, both of those are massive extremes, and most of us sit somewhere in the middle, indulging in some what people would class as degenerate habits and bad habits, and on the other side indulging into other ones that allow us to be a bit more productive. So for example, for myself, I end up doing things like biting my nails quite often, which would be a very bad habit per se, but at the other end I also do a lot of journaling and reading. So both of those things can end up doing stuff to you, from everything from more degenerate-esque things, so for example playing 10 hours of gaming a day, all the way through to actually trying to do things for yourself, like working out and building yourself physically. So what I want to discuss real quick first when it comes to habit creation is going to be the fact that you will never be the person that you actually want to become. Because the biggest issue is you might become the person that you want to become right now, but by the time you're that person, you're going to have a completely different version of yourself that you believe you need to become. It's one of the biggest issues within the self-improvement space, which is basically becoming overly critical of yourself and believing that you need to become this perfect version, and as if that perfect version exists. Now, to give you an example of a bad habit, as I think we do need to discuss those, and I will have a segment talking about that, what I want to mention is things like video game addiction. So for myself, I would definitely say that I was addicted to games for a very long time, especially growing up. I used to play things like GTA Roleplay, Destiny, and plenty of the COD games for ridiculous amounts of hours and neglect my own life. So when it comes to GTA Roleplay, for example, I would end up going to work in real life for like 8 to 10 hours, then going on GTA Roleplay for anywhere between 8 to 12 hours, and trying to get as much sleep as I could in that little in-between zone before going back to work again. And this was something that I did for probably about half a year, and it really did impact my life. But overall, that would be classed as a degenerate-esque habit, and you need to break those bad habits, but you can't break them and then just fill them up with more bad ones. So when it comes to habits and actually getting them to stick, one of the things that we need to discuss is the idea of how long it takes to build a habit. Obviously, for every single person this will change, but do not believe the myth that online creators end up spreading with the idea that it takes 30 days to build a habit, or that you can trial a habit for 30 days. I'm not saying that those videos are bad, because I actually really enjoy them, and I will be making some of them myself throughout the next year over on one of my other channels. However, one thing that I do want to talk about is the fact that this isn't the case for most people. Most people will not build a habit within 30 days. If anything, normally it's around 90 to even 4 months. That's normally how long it will take. It will take about 90 days to 120 days. And by then you'll actually feel like it's actually ingrained into you, and that is like everyday usage or every other day. So by that point you'll be a lot more content with this habit. But one thing that a lot of people do get wrong is this idea that it will come really quickly and that you can just make yourself the perfect person overnight and build up this person that you believe you should be, and then within a week or a month you end up dropping everything because you realise that it was too hard, too difficult, and you set too much of a hefty task for yourself to even get through. So when it comes to building habits, and I'd say anything in general, for example like building a business or doing anything that requires a lot of time, you need to remind yourself regularly that it's going to take a lot of time. Because if you don't, you'll end up being disheartened about the fact that you are unable to do this thing, when in reality, the people who have been able to do the thing put in the work most of the time to be able to be so heavily ingrained into the habit that you want to do or the business that you want to start. So you need to be aware that it will take time, and you have to remind yourself regularly that it will. Now the next one is going to be part of what I just mentioned a second ago, which is overly radically trying to change your life within the space of however long. Now a lot of people do this on the new year, and they'll basically believe that they can change their entire life right away and become this next level version of themselves. You should never be preparing for the 100% version of yourself that you want to build. You should basically be preparing for probably that 20 to 50% version of yourself. Because at least then, if you can start hitting those goals, you're already better than you were previously. A lot of people try to change loads of different parts of their life. They'll try and do things like journaling for the first time in their life, going to the gym all at the same time, starting to read loads, listen to loads more podcasts instead of, let's say, watching loads of Netflix, and then they start trying to cut out everything bad from their diet and start doing so much more better things with their life. The issue comes down to the fact that you're changing so much so quickly that you will just get burnt out and disheartened by this fact that you aren't that guy. You aren't the person that you thought you were, and you need to actually sit there, think properly about, okay, what are the few things that I believe that I could change over the next year properly, and do it gradually. This is for me what I would always advise, which is doing actionable steps so that you can actually visualize what you want to be doing with your life over the next 3 months and the next year and the next 3 years, that you can build up this person, and every month just add on the extra month there, so you're always 3 months ahead of yourself when it comes to goal setting. Now the next thing that I want to talk about is what a lot of content creators around habit change do not talk about often, which is getting rid of your bad habits. They always talk about getting new ones, but they never talk about getting rid of the bad ones, and I think the reason why is because, one, it's a lot harder to get rid of bad habits than it is to build new ones, or at least in my opinion it is. Purely because when you're trying to get rid of bad habits, you're trying to fight an innate desire inside of your own head that is telling you, oh yes, go do this thing. And that what is inside of your head has been there for a very long time. You're trying to get rid of programming that you've had for anywhere from, let's say, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 20 years. It's something that's ingrained in you, and it's very hard to get rid of. Because when you're fighting yourself to build up new habits, all you're fighting is friction, which is basically saying, you know what, do this every day for the next 90 days and you'll probably start to feel like it is generally just something you want to do over something you're forcing yourself to do. Versus when you're trying to fight this innate desire to do something that is a bad habit. For example, for myself, I bite my nails all the time. However, most of the time when I'm biting my nails, I don't even realize or think about it until I'm like 1 nail or 2 nails down, and then I'm there like, oh, I should be stopping. But then it's like, okay, cool, but you've basically already got there, so you might as well continue, and you might as well get rid of all of them and you can start fresh. That's how my brain ends up working with it. So for myself, I find that really the only thing that you can do when it tries to get rid of bad habits, and what's ever worked for me specifically, so I've gone through times where I haven't bitten my nails for ages, and then go through times where I just end up doing it consistently all the time. What I always find that works for me anyway is effectively to literally just always, every single time, just remind yourself constantly. I would always just have something like a notes app open on my phone with something like, don't bite your nails, and then every single time I open my phone, I'm seeing it and I'm reminded, oh yes, do not. And it just basically ends up being pushed into your head. That's the best advice that I can give that has worked for me, but I do think a lot of people avoid this topic of getting rid of old habits purely because it isn't an easy task to go down, and it's also not the sexy thing to talk about. Anyway, with that all being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the Central Perspective YouTube channel. I primarily upload videos around productivity and tech, so if that is what you're interested in, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to see more self-development content, there is a channel down below in the description under Adam Frost, which you can go subscribe to and watch my self-development journey and videos about self-development. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.